Today we're going to talk about the Benelli TnT 135. What are my thoughts on it after 1 year of ownership? Let's get cracking. Welcome to another episode of Kraken's Garage. I'm your host, Eric. Today I'm going to share the good, the bad, and the ugly of what I think of the Benelli TnT 135 after 1 year of ownership. I'm creeping up on roughly about 1,000 miles on the bike, and there's some cheers and jeers to share with you about it, so let's get to it. Since I started this YouTube channel, and my Benelli TnT videos by far, hands down, have been the #1 viewed videos of all my videos. They consistently rank in the top 5 or 6 out of the top 10 every single month. So there's a big following for this bike, and that's what I believe. There's just not a lot of knowledge that's out there for this bike, so I think it serves a purpose to help the Benelli community on my videos of what I've done. If I'm lying, I'm done. I've answered 5,000 questions on this bike, and a lot of them are repetitive. I go through answering the same questions many times. So for those of you that own them, I have a complete list of Benelli TnT videos. Watch them. Look for the most common topics that are addressed. How to adjust the valves, the cordial tires, things like that. Most of them are in my reviews of this bike. It's getting more and more difficult for me. I hope folks understand, as the channel grows, I take pride in answering every single question as best I can. It's getting out of hand. I'm answering so many right now, so that's the downside of a growing channel. But we'll get there. I've had several viewers tell me that they have a terrible wobble on the bike from day one, the day they bought it, mostly in the front end, and historically 99 times out of 100, that is from the cheap cordial tires. My suggestion to you is decide whether you want to get some knobbies or some street tires. There's several good brands. I'm not really going to take this off-road. It's not made for that, and it would take a beating, in my opinion. I don't think the suspension would hold up and the bike would hold up to that kind of jarring and beating on it. So I keep it strictly to just the road. Now, the cordial tires, straight up, they aren't very good. Mine have been okay. They hold the ground really well, except under wet conditions. When I ride in the rain, they're a bit slippery, and I think you're putting yourself in harm's way to ride these tires in the rain. I'm going to replace them probably with Michelin Pilot Pros, something along those lines. That'll give me a lot more traction and make the bike a lot more fun to ride, with its ability to carve a little better. Next most common complaint on this bike is the stock Chinese battery that comes in it is not so good or garbage. Not necessarily true. 1 year later, my bike's going strong, has been going strong since I bought it. Every time. Point is, I keep the battery on a battery tender year round. I'll get probably 3 years out of this battery, and then I'll replace it with a decent one when I get to that. A lot of people are experiencing having to replace it, a month into ownership. Well, is what I call a maintenance item, meaning that if you don't keep it on a battery tender, you will be replacing it sooner rather than later. So as long as you know what you're working with and can address it with a $30 battery tender junior, you're golden. Bike's good to go. So I highly recommend that if you just don't want to throw money away on a brand new battery. So give that some thought. The biggest 10,000-pound gorilla or elephant in the room is adjusting the valves. I did an extensive video on that. That was a nightmare trying to get knowledge, and that issue is still evolving because I have yet to get a straight answer from anybody, so we're all kind of just winging it. There were several very well-educated people that were mechanics that helped me answer a few of the questions regarding adjusting the valves. If you haven't seen that video, you might want to check that one out. There's some crucial information there. I hope, and I continue to ping on Benelli, as long as I own this bike, I will beat on that company to get the right information out to the consumer and also to the dealers for maintaining this bike. So I won't go into that video on this one, but it's a challenge, not from ability to adjust your valves. It's actually very easy. The challenge is getting the correct information to dial in your exhaust valves as well as your intake valves. So to date, I did adjust my valves and my bike is running very well. I have no complaints there. Starts up, breathes really well going down the road, that type of thing. So far so good, knock on wood. Now I put this Puig fairing on my bike, and to me I like it. I'm a tall, lanky guy, so it helps keep the blast off of my chest some. And for most people, it's kind of a joke to them because, you know, the bike only does 55, 65 miles an hour. You know, it's kind of silly to have a windshield. To each their own. I think it really snaps the bike up, makes it look sharp, and it does serve a purpose for me, for which I'm very thankful for it. I'll leave a link to this fairing down below in the description, where you can purchase it on Amazon if you're interested. But so far, it's been a welcome addition. I also replaced the clutch and brake levers with ones that fold up in the event I have a tip over so they don't break off, I should say. And also these clutch protectors here on the side in the event of a tip over. No, I wouldn't recommend those. They're junk from China. They're a generic fit, even though they say they're made for the Benelli TnT 135. They are not. I did a video on that. My advice to you is just keep the OEM ones. They're working great. Maybe put some bar end guards on it to go around your OEM levers, and I think you'll have a lot more. You'll have a less cool looking bike, but you'll have a lot more functional bike, in my opinion. All right, I'm a little over 200 pounds, and the suspension is the same as it was the day I bought the bike. It is holding up very well. Those extra 10, 11 millimeters over a Honda Grom on the front forks do make a difference for me. Everybody is different. And that monoshock, side-mounted monoshock in the rear seems to be holding up really well. I have no complaints on the suspension for what it is and what I paid for the bike. 2 thumbs up for me on that one. That's a good news. Now regarding the muffler, I bought a Yashimura pipe and installed it. For me, I put maybe 100, 150 miles on it. I wound up taking that off. The noise was deafening for me, and I'm protecting my hearing. I did a video on hearing loss and riding. If you want to learn something and save your ears, check out that video. So I put the stop going back on. Now folks, you need to understand, when you change the header, you change the air intake to a Ricky Racer Go Fast one, and you change the pipe, you have to change up the fuel mapping. So now it's getting into benefit to cost ratio, and the fuel mapping units that I've seen on Steady Garage, they sell for like $400. Plus your pipe, there's another $400 or $500. Plus your air intake, that's $1,000 cha-ching on this bike. That's gonna gain you minimal horsepower. The juice isn't worth the squeeze. My advice to you at most is just put a slip-on pipe on it or replace the pipe, reset your ECU unit, and I showed you how to do that in the install of the Benelli pipe, and going down the road, and you're good to go. If you go any further, you're gonna get into big bucks and not even gain a horsepower, in my humble opinion. So give that some thought. On my to-do list is to replace these mirrors. I'd probably go with a bar end mirror or something of that nature. Makes it a little more sharper looking. The stock ones, they do work well, no complaints. They're just ugly lollipops that stick up in the air. So there you go. Next is the headlight. I would like to address that. It's the worst headlight on any bike I've ever owned. Even though they're LED, they do a really crappy job, and the high beam is a very narrow pencil beam. I can't see anything when I'm using the high beam at all. On low beam, the light it disperses is weak sauce at best. So I would look at, if you're gonna ride at nighttime, putting on auxiliary lighting. Steady Garage has a bar one that fits right below the headlight if you would like to upgrade your lighting. Just remember, when you wire it into your bike, some states require that those utility lights have to turn off if you switch to your high beam to pass your state inspection here in the United States. At least that's the way it is in Virginia. So if I hook up auxiliary lights, and when they inspect it, if the inspection station flips on the high beams and those lights stay on, it will fail inspection. You need to know that. The only other way around that, at least in my state, is to have a cover on the light, and then they will pass the inspection. So if you're gonna buy one of those and not wire it up the way I'm telling you to, make sure your auxiliary light has a cover that snaps over it to protect it when not in use. So give that some thought. 9 out of 10 Benelli TnT owners, the first thing they want to do is do a fender eliminator kit, and I'll give you that. The existing one, which many of the bikes, not just this Benelli TnT, have that kind of arm that comes off the swing arm and wraps around and hugs the rear wheel. That is an eyesore, I will give you that, but it is functional. The minute you do the tidy tail, as soon as you ride on wet roads, dirty roads, you're going to get a racing stripe right up your back every single time. And if you enjoy getting soaked and flogged with slag on your backside, then by all means go a tidy tail. Me, I'm leaving mine right where it's put because it works. It keeps the road debris and spray off of my back. So if you're going to do a tidy tail, you need to know what's going to happen on the long-term usage of doing a tidy tail. Also, if you do a tidy tail, your license plate has to be lit as well. You could possibly incorporate the lighting system that's on the existing one and maybe wire it up to your tidy tail up underneath the seat. It does look sharp, I'll give you that, but there's some negative effects on that as well, so give that some thought as well. Now my stock header that comes off the bike, it is right behind the front wheel, so while we're talking about slag and debris and rain spray, it sprays right onto the header of the pipe. As a result, it does not have a thick coat of paint on the muffler. So I'll watch that, and if it starts to get down to the metal and start to corrode the metal in any way, I'll just pull the muffler off, take a wire wheel to it and shoot it with some high temp flat black paint, and we're good to go. And that's going to be a maintenance item going forward for anyone that keeps the stock header on this bike. It's an easy fix. It's 4 bolts, 2 to hold it on this side, 2 on the head off the bike, and actually 5, 1 other bolt to separate the slip-on from the header, and you can pull it right off and just hang it for a tree in the backyard after you've sanded it and shoot it with some paint and you're good to go. So very easy fix. I wish they would have put a more durable paint on it, but it is what it is. The brake lines. If you want superior braking, I wouldn't really, there's 2 things you could do if you want to improve the brakes. Me personally, I think the brakes are fine on the bike. They stop it just fine. But usually the first thing I do is replace the front and rear brake pads with a different blend of brake pad. Typically when I'm looking for new brake pads for my bike, look for the term SINTERED, and that usually gives you a little more stopping power from your existing brake just by changing up the compound of the actual brake pad itself. I'm happy with what mine is doing now, so I really don't feel it's necessary, but if I go to replace these stock OEM ones, I will replace them with sintered pads. I'm quite sure Steady Garage carries them, and I'm quite sure you can probably find them on Amazon and places like that. If I find them, I will link them down below, either to Steady or Amazon, if that helps you out. The next good idea if you want to improve your braking is to replace the brake lines with stainless steel braided brake lines. When you squeeze the brakes, the actual brake hose expands, and that gives you a duller feeling on the brakes. The steel braided ones don't permit the rubber tube to expand, so you get a much more instantaneous response when you're hitting the brakes. Normally less than a $100 bill to replace the brake lines, so I would recommend doing that. On my to-do list is to show you how to bleed your brake system and top off it with the correct DOT brake fluid for this particular bike, and we'll walk you through the process on how to do that. It's very easy to do, so that's coming up soon. I've had 2 oil changes on this bike. I had the initial break-in one and this existing one using a very nice oil. I've put roughly about 500 miles on it. The bike is running the same as the very day I bought it. It's running absolutely wonderful. I have no complaints. Fit and finish of the bike. Any unusual vibrations, any chatter from the plastic, things of that nature? The answer is no. The only chatter I had was when I put that Yoshimura pipe. It was hard bolted to the frame, and because of the tone it put out, it sent a vibration through the entire frame of the bike and shot it right up my spine to where I could feel it. And after about an hour or so of riding and listening to that pipe, it was getting super annoying just from the vibrations that pipe put out. It's not the bike's fault. The bike has actually performed very well regarding fit and finish. All the plastics look brand new. The paint has held up. There's been no fading I'd put this bike right up against a Honda as far as quality, fit, and finish. I mean, honestly, it's been a damn good bike. One minor complaint, the OEM handlebars, and this is true for pretty much all bikes. If you buy Yamaha, Suzuki, Honda, whatever, and this one's no different. The stock handlebars, the OEM handlebars, original equipment manufacturer is what OEM stands for, are usually very inexpensive bars. So when you have a tip over, they're gonna bend like they're made out of foil. I'm quite sure these bars are the same. Most people go to like a Pro Taper or something like that, some sort of a bar that provides the bike a lot more rigidity. In the event you tip it over, they're not gonna fold up like a cheap suit. So I'm gonna replace these bars sooner or later with some Pro Tapers, something of that nature. Another minor complaint is it goes from a narrow handlebar, it goes down to a much thicker handlebar down by the handlebar clamps, and it's very inconsistent during all those bends. So when I was attaching this fairing, it attaches right on those bends, so I had two different sizes in those bends to clamp this fairing to. That's how I found that out. So that's a quality control issue with just using cheap bars, so for what it's worth on that. So that sums up my thoughts on a year of ownership of the Benelli TnT 135. Would I buy this bike again? You betcha, I sure would. It's a solid bike for the money. For the money, it cannot be beat. Just do your maintenance, oil your chain every 500 miles, clean it every 1,000 miles, and then re-oil it. There's a video on how to do that that I posted as well. Adjust your suspension to your proper weight. Last thing is keep your cables lubed with a proper lubricant as well. Make sure all your controls are performing as they were the day you bought the bike. Any alterations you do to the bike, when you do any of the grips and things of that nature, make sure all your controls and wiring is all clear. Check the bike from lock to lock to make sure that it doesn't interfere with any of the control wires to operate the bike. Bad things happen if you don't. Keep an eye out for those things. I hope this video was helpful to anybody looking at possibly purchasing a Benelli TnT 135. It gets 2 thumbs up from me, as well as a bazillion other people that absolutely adore and love this bike. So don't be shy, go get you one. There are a lot of bikes for the money. I strongly recommend it. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, give it a thumbs down. If you want to see more in the future, hit the subscribe button right down there in the corner. And remember, folks, go riding because it's good for you, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.